President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise today in strong support of the House amendment to S4367. What my compadre over on EPW did not mention, it's the name of the bill. The name of the bill is the Thomas R. Carper Water Resources Development Act of 2024. And I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this important legislation. Just last week, the House approved this bill by an overwhelming margin of 399 to 18. This bipartisan legislation is supported by a diverse group of more than 200 stakeholders, which illustrates the positive impact that the legislation will have on communities across this country. I just want to spend a few minutes kind of discussing the great work of my colleagues in Congress and the benefits that the American people will have by the provisions on this bill. At the heart of the legislation is the Water Resources Development Act of 2024. The enactment of biennial water resources legislation over the last 10 years has been critical to addressing the nation's water resources needs. In August, the Senate passed its version of this legislation by unanimous consent. That bill was developed based on more than 1,000 requests submitted by our colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Following Senate passage, Chairman Carper and I worked with Chairman Sam Graves and Ranking Member Rick Larson of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee to resolve the differences between the House and Senate-passed WRDA bill. I'm proud of the agreement that we were able to reach, and I want to thank my House colleagues for being such great partners. I would like to highlight some of the benefits of the WRDA 2024 bill. It authorizes critical water resource studies and projects across the country. These studies and projects will support navigation along our waterways and at our ports. It will protect communities from flooding and improve our environment. This bill avoids a one-size-fits-all solutions and maintains important flexibilities so that the Corps of Engineers and non-federal partners can continue to address the unique water resources challenges across our nation. It also contains directives to the Corps to develop comprehensive implementation plans for this bill and for our prior WRDAs. This will enable the Corps to focus its energy and resources on fully implementing WRDA and prior WRDA provisions in order to better reflect the intent of this body and this Congress and previous Congresses. I also want to highlight some of the ways this bill will help directly benefit my state of West Virginia. Just over 8 years ago, in June 2016, West Virginia experienced flooding at historic rates and led to tragic deaths and devastation. This bill provides support for future projects identified by the Corps' feasibility study for flood risk management in the Kanawha River Basin. The legislation also increases the ability of the Corps to carry out smaller projects for emergency stream bank and shoreline protection, ecosystem restoration, and debris and obstruction removal, which are critical to many areas of my state. The bill also directs the Corps to explore or to expedite feasibility studies for the Upper Wyandotte and Kanawha River basins, as well as to expedite projects in Milton, as well as the Bluestone Dam in Hinton. And this bill supports many drinking water and wastewater projects throughout our state. WRDA contains similar wins for states all across this nation. I'm also glad to see that as part of this project, the Economic Development Reauthorization Act of 2024. The Economic Development Administration is tasked with facilitating economic development and creating jobs in distressed communities across the country. While EDA programs receive annual appropriations for Congress, the authorizations for these projects expired in 2008. The legislation reauthorizes EDA programs at fiscally responsible levels for fiscal years 2025 to 2029. The legislation reasserts congressional direction over EDA's funding decision. It enhances our oversight at the agency. It preserves locally driven economic development decisions, and it ensures that funding from EDA is accessible to distressed communities. It also codifies and authorizes dedicated funding for EDA Assistance to Coal Communities program, which was one of my top priorities for this legislation. This program ensures that communities in my home state of West Virginia, which were decimated by the downturn of the coal industry, have the resources that we need to recover and grow. The bill also includes consideration of coal communities when EDA assigns EDA representatives. The legislation also reauthorizes the regional commissions that were expiring or have expired, and it expands the types of activities that those commissions can carry out in their communities and modernize their administrative procedures. The bill also includes a provision to increase transparency and reduce waste across our federal real estate portfolio. And finally, the bill contains a provision that unlocks the significant backlog of funding in the TIFIA program and provides the funding the states need to use for transportation funding. It also includes provisions to prevent the backlog from occurring in the future. In closing, I would really like to take a minute to thank the staff and my chairman, Chairman Carper, but I also want to thank the staff at the various federal agencies that have helped with this legislation, helped us formulate it, and also the House and Senate Legislative Council. And I would like to thank as well the staff at the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee staff as well. I want to extend my appreciation to the EPW Subcommittee on Transportation and Infrastructure, led by Chairman Mark Kelly and Ranking Member Kevin Kramer, for their and their staff's dedication to this. I also want to thank again my friend, Chairman Carper. We've worked together. This is our, I think, second WRDA bill that we did together, and it's a fitting tribute to your decades of public service to have this piece of legislation named after you. So, from Chairman Carper's staff, I'd like to thank Courtney Taylor, John Kane, Linnea Saby, Nicole Comiskey, Ryan Smith, Claire Shanklin, Jordan Smallwood, and Tara Croft. And I'd like to thank my staff, seated behind me, many of them: Adam Tomlinson, Murphy Barrett, Libby Calloway, Dan Linkowski, Catherine Scarlett, Rebecca Hatter, Dom Rupp, and Jack Klein. So I strongly encourage my colleagues to support the House amendment to S 4367, the Thomas R. Carper Water Resources Development Act.